Hello friends and welcome to today's tutorial. I'm Jeanette with Vivo Vintage Designs. In last Tuesday's tutorial, I taught you how to draw this flower very easily. I hope you found it helpful. And as you can see, I played around, I did a few more, and then I tried to do a daisy. So this was my first practice and I could see it needed a little refining. So this morning I decided to try it again. And I created this one and I love the way that it turned out. Now, you don't have to do this on copier paper. That's what I'm doing it on. You can do this on watercolor paper and then add your color with watercolor, of course. And if you're an alcohol ink artist, once you create your flower, you can trace this onto photo paper and then use alcohol inks to fill it in. But for today's tutorial, I am using copier paper. I have some alcohol ink markers. I have a pencil. I have two fine liners. This one here is the finer tip. This is a 0.2. This one has a thicker nib and this is a 0.6. And I also have a kneadable eraser. So let's get started with this. It's really easy. And even if you can't draw, you should be able to do this. I promise. So I'm going to keep it here on the side as a reference. And this is the paper we're going to work on. So the first thing you want to do is to create kind of like an oval, but make it a little bit flatter on the bottom. And if you can't get it perfect, that's okay. It doesn't have to be. Most of it is going to be covered up by petals anyway. So once you have that, you're going to start drawing your ovals, your elongated ovals. However, notice that because the flower is facing that way, the petals on this side will be a little bit shorter and more wide. And then the petals towards the back and the sides are going to be a little bit longer. So keep that in mind as you're doing this. So I'm going to start with my petals and drawing my ovals like this. And don't worry if you think they're too long, we can fix all of that later on. It doesn't have to be perfect right now. We just want to get the idea in there. So we're going to draw our ovals, and then for these little petals on the inside here, it's the same thing, just paint them going in different directions. And you can paint some in the, draw some in the back as well, whatever you like. Okay, so that's it. We've just drawn some ovals and they're all coming from the center here. And you can see that the shorter petals that are facing upward, they are going to the side and in different directions. All right, so now that we have down the basic drawing, we're going to take our 0.6 marker or your broader nib, and I'm not going to outline the center because we're going to fill that in with alcohol ink markers. But I want you also to notice that even though the ends of, or rather the ends of the petal connecting to the center are wide in the ovals that I drew with the pencil, as I refine them with the fine liner, I'm going to narrow them a little bit. And again, very easy. So let's start here. And you can refine these as you go along and define the shape a little bit differently if you like. You can see I'm narrowing it, and then I'm coming up here, and you can even curve it a little bit. We have a little petal here. And as you go along, if you feel like you need a petal somewhere, you can always add that in. Now this is that really long one. Just gonna make it a little bit shorter. And I think I need one here, so I'm just gonna add that in. Right there. I think I want this one to come from over that one. And I think I definitely need another one here. And there we have the basic flower. So now I'm going to use my kneadable eraser and I'm going to erase those pencil lines. Sorry about the shaking of the camera, but as some of you may know, I just had surgery about a week ago, a little over a week ago, and I can't make it down the stairs. So I'm working in my kitchen. All right, so we have our flower. Now we're going to switch to the 0.2 fine liner. And we're going to create the little line in each of the flowers. But notice here that as I drew these, I used a very light touch and I made them kind of skippy. I didn't draw a solid line. Of course, you can do whatever you want. But notice that as I drew them, I kind of curved the line to indicate the direction that I want the petal to be going in. So that's really important. But of course, practice this a few times, and after you do it a few times, you will find that it just comes easier. So again, I'm using the smaller nib, and I'm just going to create some little skippy lines. And you can see how automatically the placement of that line shows the direction that the petal is growing in. And then I like to add a little something on the side there. Just makes it more interesting. Of course, you don't have to do that. And I'm just using a really light touch. I think my marker is giving out on me. And we're going to do the same for the tiny little petals. Okay, once you have those lines in, now we're going to add a little bit of shading. So for the shading, we're going to flick the fine liner and we're going to start at the base of each petal. And you want your lines to flick because if you draw a straight line like this, the end is blunt and it's thick and you want it to taper. So by flicking the marker like that, it makes the end of the stroke more narrow and more, just looks better. So let's start adding those in. And again, you want to make sure that you keep the lines going in the direction that you want to indicate the petal is growing in. And I forgot to do this one, so let's add those little lines. And then add the shadow at the base. And you don't have to get crazy with these little shadows. It's really not that big a deal, because we're going to add a little bit more shadow using the markers. This just helps. And if you're not using the alcohol ink markers, this step would be more important. Now, I like to turn my paper because it helps me to keep the lines in the direction that I want them to go. I'm going to draw a little shadow here, simply because that one petal is covering the petal underneath. Did I miss any? I usually miss one or two. Okay, this is pretty good so far. Now, if you want to take this a step further, you can see that on this one, I added a little bit of shadow on some of the tips. And again, you don't have to do this. It's just a little added something that makes it a little bit more interesting. And I'm just going to add a few little lines to show that there's a little shadow there. And you don't have to do it on all of them, but it's nice on the ones that are facing at the bottom, rather, to add a little bit of shadow to make it look like it's flipped over a little bit. And okay, I'm going to leave it at that. So now we're going to use the alcohol ink markers to create the center of the flower as I did here. So I've chosen 4 different markers. I have, that's a pink, that's not an orange, but it'll work. You can use orange, you can use whatever colors you like. So I have a really dark brown, a lighter brown, you can use an orange and a yellow. Diesel's always got to get in on the action. Sorry about that. So we're going to start with the darkest alcohol ink marker. And these markers have 2 sides. One is a fine tip and the other one is a broad tip. We're going to use the fine tip. And I'm just going to start at the base of my center, at the bottom of my center, where there would be more shadow. I'm going to start dotting in this darker brown. And you can see I'm leaving space in between. I don't want to fill in the entire area, and then I'll add a few up towards the top. That easy. Now I'm going to switch to the lighter brown, and I'm going to do the same thing. And actually, this really doesn't show very different. I'm sure on the camera it doesn't show very different, the color, but it is. We're just going to add a couple of those. And I'm going to just fill in this little area down here because that should be pretty dark. Then I'm going to switch to the orange. Actually, I think I'm going to go with the yellow first. I'm going to start filling in this area here. And I'm using this one in a heavier consistency. But I am leaving a little white space in between. And now I'm going to go to the orange, and I'm going to add a few dots. But as I go up towards the top, I'm making less of them, and I'm making sure that they're a little further apart. And there's your center, finished. I think I'm going to take the lighter brown and I'm going to add a few more of these just to make it look a little darker down there. Maybe add a few smaller ones. And that's it. So now to create the shadow in the petals like I did here, I just used a very, very pale blue. Now I do have a gray that you can use because you want the flower to appear white. But if you use too dark of a color, it's going to make it look dark. So using a light blue works, or if you have a really pale, pale gray, which I do have, I just don't have it upstairs. And now I'm going to use the fine tip, and from the base of the petals, I'm going to start flicking to create a little shadow. The same way we did with the fine liner. I'm going to even follow that little line that we added in the center. And again, I'm going to turn my paper because that makes it life easier for me. And you can see it's just little lines. It's not a lot of work. You don't have to think about it too much. And where there's a petal laying over another petal, you might want to add a little bit more shadow there because that will cast a shadow in that area over that petal. And then we're going to come back and do the tips as well. I think I've got them all. So now let's add a little bit of shadow in on the bottom of some of these petals, just so it looks like a little shadow down there. So I'm just doing the same exact thing, adding a few little lines. You don't even have to, you can just run the marker across the edge to create your shadow. You don't have to flick. And that's all you have to do. Now I used the fine liner, the number 2, in this painting, to create a little detail in the center so it looks it stands out a little bit more. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to draw like a half circle on some of the little dots that I added in here. So I'm not going completely around all of them, just a little bit here and there. And you can see how it makes those little dots stand out a little bit more. And it creates a really nice detail in the center of your flower. And of course, you don't have to do this. It's just, you know me, if you're familiar with my videos, I can't stop myself. Okay, we're going to leave that alone. Now to create the stem, as I mentioned in the previous video, I like a curved stem. I think it makes the painting more interesting. So find your center point of the center of the flower and then put your marker down and curve your line. Now, because this petal would be casting a little shadow on there, I'm going to use the number 2, and I'm going to start making some little lines, but I'm going to make them dark in that area. And as I start to go down, I'm just going to add a few more little lines. You don't even have to go all the way down because this is your focal point, not the rest of the stem. So just add a few lines. And then to create this stem, what I did was, or rather to add color to the stem, I used the blue and I went over the stem like this. And then I used the green, and this is not the green that I would like to have used, but it's what I have. So I'm just going to sketch a few little lines in there with the alcohol ink marker. And there you go. How easy is that? And how pretty is that? It didn't take a long time. Once you practice this a few times, you'll get the hang of it and it'll become easier and easier to do. But it's a simple way to create a beautiful flower. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Please check out the description box for links to the products used. And if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more like it, I post 1 to 2 videos a week. So consider subscribing. Please leave a comment if you have any questions and give this video a thumbs up. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.